Hello, folks. This is Race Matters, and I'm Eddie Carson, a host here. And like we do every episode, we lean into the nomenclature, thinking about the spirit of race, class, gender, and all those elements that really kind of define the structures that divide, but also opportunities for us to come together and engage in conversations to listen and to learn from people who have a lot of elements to tell us about. I'm excited here because we're sitting here today with arguably one of the great Black public intellectuals in this country, and that being Dr. Brother Cornel West. And Cornel doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and say just a few things. One, Dr. West is the Dietrich Bonhoeffer Chair at Union Theological Seminary. He teaches works on Bonhoeffer as well as courses thinking about philosophy, religion, Black studies, critical thought, and just kind of a number of other different things as it relates to philosophy, politics, cultural theory, and literature. Brother West has written over 20 books and edited 13. I've read a number of his books, particularly the first book I read was Race Matters back when I was a high school student. The first time I came in contact with that, I think I was a junior at the time. I'd read Democracy Matters as an undergraduate student. And then, of course, years later, I enjoyed reading his memoir, Brother West, Living and Loving Out Loud. So we're here with Brother Cornel West. We're excited. Brother West, welcome to Race Matters, my friend.
Oh, brother, you so kind to have me, though. I want to thank your precious wife, Jeanette, for coming up with that title. But you all work so magnificently together. But it's a blessing to be in conversation with you, though, man. And you've been a force for a good while. Look like you got Brother Martin on the wall. Oh, Lord, have mercy. You set high standards, man. Very high standards. There it is. There he is.
Look, brother, that's only the start of it, right? We'll have to talk offline about my work on Du Bois and socialism and the things that's taking place there. Maybe have to send you a
Oh,
copy to
no,
do a
you can
review
weave
for
in
me.
some Du Bois. You can weave in a little bit of Du Bois in the
There we go. Look at
conversation.
that
He's
copy.
always here. He's always here. You know that, brother.
You know, you know, Dr. West, you've been you've been engaging in a dialogue and a discourse of thinking about race matters for a long period of time. And you know, one of the things that my mama always tell me, and she's a product of the Jim Crow South, living in Selma and Linden, Alabama, now in Montgomery, Alabama, is the fact that she'll tell me just to catch my breath when I feel like I'm starting to panic about the the delineation of how we contemplate race matters today because she's like, we've been there. She said she's fought the battle, done a hard work, and we're not going back. I'm not sure I fully agree with my mother though. And I love her to death, and she's always right.
Mm.
But something feels different here in the 21st century where I feel like there's this erasure taking place to change Black people, change our history, change our story. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, my friend?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Now you know your mother's full of grace, dignity, wisdom, but everybody's part of a Socratic dialogue. And I think where you are right is that we Black folk have been on intimate terms with forms of catastrophe for 400 years, but it's the nihilism that's new. It's the sense of catastrophe that creating closure. See, the connection between culture erasure and political closure. Political closure is the difficulty of generating hope. You see, even under Jim Crow, under American terrorism, Black people still had a rich sense of hope because we were not spiritually poor. We were spiritually rich. We were materially poor. But the market has flattened out Black culture in such a way that it is a different kind of moment. The nihilism is much more powerful. Nihilism is hopelessness, meaninglessness, lovelessness, touchlessness, grinlessness, all the things, jokelessness, all the things that kept human beings, and in our case, Black human beings, going. So under Jim Crow, yeah, they had lynching, they had segregation, but man, we had levels of self-confidence, style. We had strong churches, we had strong families, we had strong nightclubs, we had strong ties together. What the Germans would call Gemeinschaft, strong ties together. Those have been shattered by the market in the last 50 years. See? So that the shift from ghettos to hoods is qualitative.
Mm.
See, Donny Hathaway singing about the ghetto. Was a whole lot of love there, man. It's a whole lot of empathy, a whole lot of solidarity, man. And Leon Hudson, Leroy Hudson, and him, when you sing about the hood, oh, survival of the slickest, whole lot of guns, whole lot of put down, whole lot of violation and flagellation. Very different cultural and spiritual dynamic, man. When your mother was growing up in Alabama, she'd go to the churches. They were never, ever pure, but you had pastors. Now you got CEOs. That's a market model. That's something else. You had deep churches. Now you got mega churches. Very different, man. You had deep choirs. Now you got titillating praise teams. The market has come in and flattened the culture out so that we end up being a people. We're still a great people because we still survive. And, you know, Kendrick Lamar ain't no joke. He's a genius. He's part and parcel of the great wave and river that we are. But it's much more difficult to deal with meaning and hope now than it was when your precious mother was growing up in Selma, Alabama. Does that make sense, though, brother?
No, it makes perfect sense. But you know, listening to you, you got me thinking a little bit. And I know you've written and you've spoken about this a good bit, especially when it comes to the role of the black middle class. And at times, is there a betrayal of the black middle class when it comes to black people? This whole notion where folks kind of, ascertain level of wealth, a little bit more education, then, that sense of Uncle Tom kind of kicks in. I'm not trying to call names or pick one, folks. And then they kick the ladder down and they pretend like they've forgotten about the rest of this.
That's right.
What problems, and again, this is a white supremacy problem. I want to be clear here, but what problems are we seeing in terms of the attitudes of black folks toward black folks and how they support elements of white supremacy, especially from the black middle class and even beyond that?
But we've always had that, though, even going back to free Negroes as opposed to enslaved Africans in the 19th century. You remember E. Franklin Frazier's great text that he wrote in French.
Black bourgeoisie, all
That's
of that,
it.
absolutely.
You got it. You got
Yep.
it. When it came out in English, 1957, he was laying out some very painful truths where you had a black middle class disproportionately sunshine yellow and paper bag brown. So you had colorism and you had hueism working too. But then you got, giants like Benjamin Elijah Mays, who was
Yep.
beautifully black, towering figure, the greatest educator probably produced in this empire. But he was always someone who cut against that kind of grain. But that issue of the black bourgeoisie has always been there. And there's a sense in which the black bourgeoisie is like any bourgeoisie. It's concerned about its own status, concerned about its own interests. It's the Martin Luther King Jr.'s and others who are members of the black middle class who cut against that. They are the great figures who say, look, I am as much in solidarity with Jamal and Letitia and Ray Ray as I am my Alpha brothers and my AKA sisters. Ooh, that's a different kind of move, brother. That's a different kind of move. And Martin ain't the only one to make it, but he's one of the crucial ones to make it. Very much so.
So how do we address this? And again, this is a problem. We know about the problems of capitalism, the systems that we're in, we're fighting, we're operating against things where there's just a big tidal wave in front of us that we're combating. The thing that I wrestle with you know, is that, and I'm gonna get on a little personal level here, just with you
Sure.
a second, right? And that is, one of the things I don't do is I don't sell out black folks. I think there are enough folks who sell out black folks who, talk about black folks. And I'm not talking about those black folks who, and we know the whole saying that, not all skin folk are kinfolk. Well, I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about the fact that there exist among the black population folks who've forgotten that we are a unified people and we need to be collective in how we think about bringing about the change. And we can't always sit back and wait for other folks to do those correcting for us. I'm not sure I know how to do that. And I think about it a lot. And I don't know if anyone has a real good answer to how do we do that? Or is that even possible here in the 21st century? Has it ever been possible, to your earlier point?
Well, that's a wonderful question, though, brother. I really appreciate this conversation. But one is that there's no one definitive answer to your question. The guarantee of never selling out Black folk is a genuine love for Black people. See, if you really love folk, then you can't stand the fact that they're being treated unfairly. You loathe the fact they're being treated unjustly. And if you don't do something, the rocks are going to cry out, which means that in your behavior, in your heart, in your soul, it's like loving your mama. You never sell out your mama, ever. It's not even a possibility. How come? Because you love her so, and language can't capture that. Propositions fall short. Well, that kind of love on a continuum is the kind of love of Black people. I'm a Christian, so I try to love everybody. But I begin with Black folk. I begin with oppressed people. I begin with the orphan and the widow. That's part of the Hebrew scripture, right? You spread in that hesed, the orphan and widow, fatherless, motherless, oppressed and persecuted. They are the fundamental target, but you end up embracing all of humanity. And what are the measures of the love that we're talking about? Your willingness to take a risk, your willingness to tell the truth, not just about the powers that be that's crushing them, but to them and to yourself. And when you have that kind of love, and that's what Martin had. We know Martin got a lot of faults and foibles. That brother got a love of Black people. So did Marcus Garvey. Now I got ideological problems with Marcus Garvey, but the brother had love, man. He got love, man.
I can appreciate what you're saying about Garvey, and especially me as a Du Boisian, and I know, brother, you are too, and that conflict, right? That just kind of wave that carried out for a long period of time and everything. But when I think about this idea of the erasure and the crisis of blackness that's happening, whether it's the Black middle class selling out other folks, or whatever that may look like, I sit there and I think about the beautiful things that Black people are doing that we should celebrate. So I got to tell you this, and you probably hadn't seen it yet, and I'm sure you heard about it. I'm in this conversation with a group of Black folks, and the only thing they want to talk about is this movie called Sinners. And I went to see Sinners. And let me tell you, and I don't go to the movies that often, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. And I mean, I'm talking about blues. I'm talking about jazz. We were talking about 1930 Mississippi, Jim Crow. And sure, they brought in a little vampire stuff like that. But aesthetically, artistically, it was one of those things that reminded me that even as we're pushing back against the dawning of white supremacy, they're trying to erase us. Black people keep making good art,
Yeah,
movies,
yeah,
books, the things that are happening there too. It's just always good and brings me spirit.
absolutely. See, and that's part of what I was referring to when I was talking about your precious mother growing up in Jim Crow, Alabama, where all of those vicious white supremacists and terrorists trying to instill fear in Black people. And then, here come Eddie Kendricks in Birmingham. Here come Nat King Cole and the Cole families from Montgomery. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Here come Willie Mays from Birmingham. We can go on and on and on. Why? Because they're produced out of the rich sense of artistic creativity, moral courage, spiritual fortitude. See, the Black musical tradition is the greatest tradition in the modern world when it comes to artistic creativity and spiritual fortitude. There ain't no doubt about it. That's why the whole world has to come to terms with our sound. And it's not a function of skin pigmentation. It's a function of Black people choosing excellence, choosing quest for beauty, choosing a quest for truth in the face of all the wounds and scars and bruises. And you and I know that, there's a whole lot of Black folk who choose cowardliness, who choose narcissism, who choose individualism. And that doesn't produce great excellence. It doesn't produce spiritual greatness at all. So it's not a question of just skin color, but it's that a particular group of Black people chose consistently every generation to generate the kinds of structures of feeling and structures of value and structures of sound that you get in that movie. Now, I haven't seen the movie, but I hear a lot about it. And I hear good things about it. I want to check it out.
I'm going to tell you, It's worth it. Just to listen to the sound and the tunes alone, you're gonna be in good shape right there. All is good. One of the things I want to ask you about here is, we think about this erasure and what's happening in terms of Black identity and this campaign that's going on too. What are your concerns right now as we move forward? We are, I don't know, you had your run for political office. We've seen who settled into the White House. We've seen all the executive orders, the anti-DEI work that's going on. We've seen the previous attacks on affirmative action that's there. I mean, what do you worry about what's next? And how do we start really informing and educating folks to be prepared for what's next?
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I try to put this in a larger historical context, though, brother, that it's been roughly 70 empires since the emergence of the species. United States number 68. Every empire comes and goes. It emerges, it's sustained for a while, it begins to decay and decline, and then begins to die. And usually it takes a number of centuries for that death to set in a concrete way. But the decay and the decline becomes quite discernible. And there's no doubt that the American empire, America's always been an empire. America's one of the few empires that denies it is an empire. They say that's part of the childishness. That's part of the childishness. It believes it's beacon of liberty. No, you got slaves. Wake up. We don't want to be woke. Oh, okay. So you all are into sleepwalking. You just want to live a life of denial. What happens when you're in denial? You become addicted to self-destruction. Melville talks about it in Moby Dick. You get addicted to the whiteness of the whale, which is a form of white supremacy. You get addicted to the very thing that you're in denial of, and therefore you're unable to come to terms with life, with time, with history, with love. Mm-hmm. And we're living in a moment now where under Trump, getting the intensification of the gangsterization of the country and the world. And that has to do with organized greed. It has to do with weaponized hatred. It has to do with institutionalized indifference to the weak and vulnerable, to the poor. Rabbi Heschel say, indifference to evil is more invidious than evil itself. So that indifference is a sign of deep spiritual decay. Now, America's always had these, but America's had enough countervailing forces and figures and movements to try to curtail the worst. Now with Trump in the driver's seat, and Trump is just the crystallization of American gangsterism. I mean, that's exactly what he is. It comes in all colors, but it's been very strong on the vanilla sides of town since 1776 in terms of the treatment of indigenous peoples and black peoples and working peoples and so on. But what happens now then is what? Well, first we got to tell that truth because it affects the world. You got nuclear catastrophe. You got two gangsters with their fingers on the button, Putin on the one hand, Trump on the other. Then you got ecological catastrophe, but denial about that too. It really doesn't exist. I don't know why these people are so worried about this. This is self-destruction, man. This is self-destruction on the way. Then you look at inside of American society, and what do you see? Not just grotesque wealth inequality, the kind of thing that Brother Bernie's concerned about. And Bernie, he's from Vermont, but he's a secular Jewish from Brooklyn. He got that secular Jewish culture that's rich coming out of Brooklyn. He just brought it up there to Vermont with the WAFs. Okay, that's cool. That's cool, but still not a whole lot of chocolate folk up there. God bless them and be with them. He got much to give, much to contribute. But Bernie's right about the grotesque wealth inequality having to do with Wall Street greed. But the public face of the American empire in terms of evil has always been white supremacy. Mm-hmm. It is a crime of barbarity. We don't have a language for the most barbaric form of slavery known in the modern world, the most barbaric form of neo-slavery with lynchings every 2.5 days for 50 years and can't pass a lynching bill in Congress until a few years ago. That's a sick society, man. Deeply sick. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't have any possibility, it doesn't have any future, because, the Martin Kings and Fannie Lou Hamers and Rabbi Heschels and others fought to try to tease out the best of this empire. But the attempt to create barriers so that young people have no access to the best of their own culture.
Ooh,
See, that's what culture erasure of black people is. Can you imagine black people with no America with no blues, no gospel, no rhythm and blues, no hip hop, no,
you
and that's
can't
just
have we can't be a people.
exactly because you're not even America at that point. And of course, let's just be very honest about it. Majority of white brothers and sisters voted for the gangster, right? So that black people could not vote at all. Then it'd be he'd have 75%, 80% of the votes, man. That's a sick country, man.
Well, and that caught me off guard too. I mean, and so something you jumped into, you mentioned, Brother Martin and Fannie Lou Hamer and some of those folks who are kind of navigating and kind of pulling black folks and moving us in a different way.
Right.
Outside of yourself, right, and the work that you're doing, your voice has been quite prophetic for a while. You've been speaking a lot of truth to a lot of issues. Who are those folks outside of yourself that are going to move us forward, black or white folks, right? As we continue to work through this catastrophe that's taking place now in this world. Are those folks? Because I'm telling you, I'm not seeing a lot of leaders and a lot of folks and a lot of voices step up. But I'm starting to see folks get nervous and kind of
Right.
cow down.
Well, one is your voice, brother.
I
That's
appreciate
important.
that.
I'm serious, man. That's very important. William Barber, he just got arrested just yesterday.
I
He's my
saw,
dear brother.
yep.
Met him when he was a graduate student at Duke. He's now at Yale. Uh, Gerald Horne, one of the greatest scholars alive. He engaged in a truth-telling, connecting empire and predatory capitalist processes and white supremacy, understands it on a hemispheric and a global level. So he's not just talking about the U.S. nation state. Uh, um, you got Chris Hedges, my dear brother.
Yes.
He's a truth teller to the core, vanilla brother. He and I have been to jail and been to many court cases together. I could go on and on here. My dear brother Tavis Smiley, I'm on his radio show Monday through Friday with Truth Time, but 1580 Talk Radio, what he does in terms of being part and parcel of the resistance, not in terms of, having a little quote unquote sit in for a couple of hours
Mm-hmm.
when you're still on the Democratic Party plantation and think you're part of the resistance. No, 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 no. It's got to go far beyond that. And you have to be willing to take a stand on foreign policy. You got to be willing to talk about genocide in Gaza. Oh, that's unpopular. That's going to get you in trouble. They're going to call you an anti-Semite. No, you let the world know we must never have any patience for hatred against Jewish brothers and sisters. But Jewish brothers and sisters are human like everybody else, which means what? Which means they can terrorize other people too, even though they've been terrorized for 2,500 years. They can traumatize other people too, even though they've been traumatized for 2,500 years. Jews are human just like black people, just like Europeans, just like Asians, and all human beings must be accountable. And when you start talking about 25,000 babies who were killed and can't have one politician raise an issue other than Rashida, who herself is Palestinian, that's part of spiritual sickness, man.
No, brother. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about, you mentioned some of those great leaders who are going to be prophetic truth tellers. I did a book with Gerald Horne and Philip Luke Senator a few years back on Du Bois and socialism and democracy.
Wow.
We brought in some
Wow.
great folks that edited that work and put that together. And so Gerald, that
He's a
brother.
giant, brother. He's
Yeah,
a
he's a
giant.
monster. I don't know how he sleep. I feel like he puts out a book every week.
I,
I'm trying to
I
put out
think
one every 5 years.
last time he slept was about 1985.
Um,
It's unbelievable, man. And
he,
it's quality. He's producing quality. It's not
you
just
know what?
producing a whole lot.
I'll give Gerald a shout out here, brother Philip Luke Siddons here. That we call him the white ball brother, who's always doing all kind of great scholarship and stuff too. But one of the things you mentioned, of course, are the challenges among the Democratic Party, we think about issues of erasure. We know historically Black folks, right? It's kind of being stuck between a rock and a hard spot, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
we're stuck between these places, where do we go and who do we support? Where this sense that, well, we're not going to lean into any third party candidates just because of the nature of the way American systems work. So there's fear of not understanding that. But yet you look at the Democratic Party, and there are no leaders in that party.
Mm-mm.
It's absent, invisible, really just silence right now. What
That's exactly right.
what do you tell folks who are like, well, do I jump ship from the Democratic Party, but yet we got a system that's not exactly fixed that may disrupt progress? Or do we lean into something where there's just no sense of leadership and organization that's there just because that's just part of the status quo?
Well, first you got to tell the truth and be truthful to yourself. See, part of the problem is that we got too many people who are willing to lie for a position or use lies as a mode of efficacy for their upward mobility. So that, for example, with Biden, they'll say, oh, Biden is a great working class president. No, no, no. Biden's the architect of a crime against humanity called mass incarceration. Biden is an authorizer of genocide. Tell the people the truth. We're not talking about Biden and his mama. We're talking about his policy. We're talking about his deeds. So you get these folk out here, the Democratic Party, who know they lying about Biden. And therefore, there's no authenticity. There's no power to it. They just lying in order to stay on the plantation, the Democratic Party plantation. If you get off the plantation, then you got to either create a new party, right, or you simply have an inside-outside strategy, because outside of the party usually are movements. And if they're not movements, they're just organizations trying to create movements, some kind of social motion, some kind of social momentum. Black Lives Matter, very important social momentum, trying to create a social movement. That's not a political party, but you spend a lot of time there. We learned from the 19th century. What did Douglas and the other folk do when they had choices between two slaveholders? Well, they formed a Liberty Party. Well, the Liberty Party was weak. It was really part of the abolitionist movement. Well, we have abolitionist movement in the 21st century. We want to abolish poverty. We want to abolish police brutality. We want to abolish the brutal forms of incarceration. We want to abolish the way in which capital uses workers as utilities and so forth. And so, of course, what I tried to do is just allow some of that spillover into the presidential race. And it was just running for justice. I've been running for justice for 50-some years and running for Jesus for 50-some years. And it just spills over into running for president. But that's just a vehicle and a vessel of the same thing I've been doing. And people think, well, oh my God, we got this black sister running for president. Where's her stand on Gaza and genocide? What she say about mass incarceration? What she say about poverty? What she say about decrepit schools? Well, no, she's got an opportunity program. Oh, I see. No, I'm not going for that. But that's like asking me to find Luther Vandross at a bluegrass concert. He ain't gonna be there. I'm going to the Apollo, god dang it. I ain't got nothing against bluegrass. I'm going to the Apollo. I want the real thing for me. I ain't coming. I'm not putting bluegrass down, but that's not where Luther gonna be.
No, Luther's not gonna be there.
He ain't gonna be there. Donny Hathaway ain't gonna be there, man.
You're right. I have nothing against bluegrass, right? I'll even lean in, and I've even been to some of those festivals. I talked to my mama who loves Luther, and Luther's her go-to person more than anything else. And my mama, it is all about Luther.
Lord, that's the reason why I wear this thing around my neck, because of Luther Vandross.
Oh, really? Say a little bit more about that.
He told me to do it. Man, I was given a commencement, man. New York Theological Seminary. Brother Bill Howard was president at the time, and Luther's sister, who had just passed, was graduating. So Luther and his mother showed up to get the degree posthumously. So it was a very moving moment, And of course, I got down on my knees, not because I worship him, because I worship only one God, but I was just letting the brother know, you enrich my life in ways I do not have the capacity to express to you. I said, but I'm always worried about getting laryngitis because I travel all the time. And he said, I always just wear this thing around my neck. I said, dang. So I started wearing that thing, man. I haven't
Different.
got, oh man, I'm telling you. I know people think it's psychological, and it probably is. But my voice has been stronger than ever since Luther told me to do that, brother. I'm telling you, man.
You know, you jumped into that angle, and I got you here, and I'm gonna have to delve in. I'm gonna have to just ask you, right? Your folks, the people you go to, right? Where do you? You're a busy person, giving lectures, writing, teaching. You're in a political arena. Everybody wants a little bit of Cornell. And before I move on, right? I've heard you give a couple lectures at different places. I ran into you. I'm gonna tell you the conversation. You won't remember this. I
Sure,
was
no.
I was at Princeton University, 2007. I want to say it was probably, I don't know, I can't remember the month now. It was 2007. So I'm in the Nassau Hotel in Princeton. I know you know the Nassau Hotel.
Oh, yes.
You're cruising through the lounge there, and I was like, Brother West, what's going on? And you came over and we started chatting. Back then, I was living in Texas. You were talking about you were recently down in Texas not too long, and we just kind of chit chatted. That was a
Wow.
million years ago, brother, but I had to throw that conversation out there. It was good.
18 years ago, almost 20 years ago, man.
Isn't that crazy? Almost,
Wow,
yep,
wow.
that's crazy right
Well,
there.
I just think to myself, though, how good God is to both of us because we still here, we still black men in our right minds. You see, one of the things we should never forget that white supremacy cut so deep in the country that the very fact that black people are still here with sanity and dignity is a kind of miracle, man.
It
Because
is.
it really is when you think of what the history really is, and even the depths of the history, most people can't take because it's too much.
I mean,
244 years of slavery, and the average slave died at 27 years. 244 years is a long time, and then 12 years, and then all of a sudden you got another 100 years of Jim Crow and Jane Crow. Hey, man, what is it about these people? In the face of all of that, we don't form a black version of the Ku Klux Klan. In the face of all that, we teach the world more about love than most other groups can conceive of. In the face of that, we still call for freedom of everybody. In the face of that, we still healing the world with our music and with our sound and with the ways we stylize space and time. In face of that, we still got a joy that the world didn't give us and the world can't take away. What is it about these black people? Well, it's not that we're superior. No, we ain't supremacists. No, we had enough people to choose integrity, honesty, decency, courage, compassion, sensitivity to others, including ourselves. Now, that tradition is not guaranteed to last. That tradition could also die among black folk. And we end up just as assimilated into America's greed, assimilated into America's weaponized hatred, assimilated to America's weaponized spiritual emptiness. That's a real possibility.
that
But
nope, go,
we
go.
have we still got a cloud of witnesses that haven't done that, brother.
All right,
And
I'm
I'm
gonna
looking
say
at one right now. I'm looking, I know Sister Jeanette and all your networks and everything else, part
yes.
of the same movement, whatever, whoever they are.
And that's what we do. That's what I do, right? My work that takes me down to Cambridge and all the stuff, the organizing that we do. That is part of the reason I have you here. It is what I do in my writing, my own lectures, talking to a brother like you, really trying to insert a level of excitement and energy among black folks because we got to love ourselves, love each other, but we got to love all people too.
But we gotta
We
love everybody.
got to love
Well, the thing is,
everybody.
but it's difficult to really love your mama and your daddy in a profound way and not have that love spill over on vanilla sides of town and other ways. Because once you experience the real thing that Ashford and Simpson were talking about, ain't nothing like the real thing. When you got the real love, you know you can't bottle that up just for one group of people. It spills over.
Brother, what do you do to sustain yourself, to keep the blues operating within your spirit moving forward, to have the energy, the courage, all the things that have to happen? Because again, we got a lot of work to do. You got a lot of work to do. I got a lot of work to do. How do you sustain yourself?
Well, brother, I was blessed with a mama named Irene and a daddy named Clifton and a brother named Clifton and sister Cynthia and Cheryl at a church, Shiloh Baptist Church. and a pastor, Willie P. Cook from Brookhaven, Mississippi, who baptized me 64 years ago. And I intend to be faithful unto death. All that's inside of me. That's been poured inside of me at the deepest level, just like your mother and all that rich Alabama stuff poured into you. Everywhere you go, you could go to Bali, you could go to Nepal, you could go to Tokyo, Japan, and you got all of that rich Alabama gut bucket culture, black culture poured into you. And with that inside of you, it would take 3 or 4 lifetimes for that to run out, man. That's gas in our tank. That's wind at our back.
That's the best kind of funk I've heard all day, and I like that. You know, Brother West, as we get to end here of this episode of Race Matters and everything, one question I have for you is, what's next on your radar?
I'm gonna keep bearing witness, brother. I'm gonna keep bearing witness, man. I wake up every morning with my mind on the 5th chapter of Thessalonians, which is count your blessings. Count your blessings, though, brother. With gratitude and thankfulness, I'm glad I came from my mom and daddy. I'm glad I was born a black man who revels in the legacies of the Fannie Lou Hamers and the Ida B. Wells Barnetts and the Louis Armstrongs and the Sarah Vaughns and the Aretha Franklins. Allows me to be sensitive to the Stephen Sondheims and the Barbara Streisands and the Hall and Oakeses and the Righteous Brothers and others going all the way to bluegrass. You know, because Brother Robbie, who my dear brother, conservative brother, he's a bluegrass banjo expert, and he can play that thing, and it sounds good now. It sounds good, but give me Bootsy first. You know, I want Bootsy Collins first. Well, why? That it just speaks to me on a deeper level, and so I'm just thankful that I have been able to be so immersed and shot through and soaked through with such a great tradition of a great people. But we live in dim and grim times.
Yes,
but the catastrophes are as real as a heart attack in terms of nuclear, ecological, economic catastrophe, the American empire declining. What kinds of new configurations do we have in the world? China's got its own structures of domination. Russia has its own structures of domination. India has its own moves toward neo-fascism, similar to the neo-fascism that we see in the White House with Trump and company. So I'm in no way downplaying what we're up against. But as you know, and it's beautiful that you and Brother Gerald work together like that, man. See,
I'll send you offline. I'll send you some stuff, and you know, and that was organized through Brother Philip Luke Senator, and it was good stuff. I mean, I got, you know, I got a lot of energy, a lot of writing, a lot of stuff that needs to be put out there, particularly as we start thinking about the challenges of capitalism, the structures that are existing there. And last thing I'll say too, right, is that, you know, how do we continue to uplift a people and combat some of the narratives that are out there that are working against us? And that has to happen. So, folks.
But one thing you always
Yeah.
want to do, though, brother, you never allow your foes to be your first point of reference.
Oh, yes.
So you end up being a parasite on their host. You see, your first move, your first point of reference is what Du Bois called the power behind the veil. Your first point of reference is the great tradition of resistance and remembrance that has been at work over against your foes, over against your enemies. You see what I mean? That's very important, because if you're going to sustain your empowerment, let alone your integrity, you got to be grounded and rooted in the thing that has sustained our people for all of these years. And you can't sustain a people by being just preoccupied with what's coming at the people. You see, you can't be a blues man and a jazz man if all you're concerned about is what's happening on the vanilla side of town. You can't be a black preacher if all you want to do is be obsessed with the white preacher on the other side. No, we got our own styles, our own traditions, our own structures of values and feelings. We can learn from them, but they're not the major point of reference. No, not at all. That's how you make sure you never sell out. That's how you make sure you never give up.
Pointed, Prophetic as always. Folks, this is Race Matters. I'm Eddie Carson. I'm here with Brother Professor Dr. Reverend Cornel West. I'm going to throw a lot of titles in there for him because
Well, I'm
earned.
not a reverend, but I got too
But
much
but you can
gangster.
preach.
I got
But you
too much
can
gangster.
preach.
I got too much gangster in me to be a reverend and a pastor, though, bro. You know that now.
Look,
Lord.
I know about that, but you got enough black funk and soul that earns you the title and the intellect with it. I'm going to throw Reverend in there
That's
anyway.
you very kind. You very kind. You very kind.
People, thank you for
God bless
chiming
you, man.
in, listening to Race Matters here with Brother West here at WJOP, Jopper Radio, Newburyport. You can find the show at ProfessorCarson.com. You can find it on SoundCloud. You can also find Race Matters on YouTube. We hope you'll chime in. And one of the things I'm going to do, since I've just given that, is Brother West on my show, I always give my guests the last word. I'm going to let you have the last voice here, and then we'll be out. My friend, you have the last voice. Anything you
But
like to
I want to salute your mama. She did a magnificent job on you with your father. I want to salute Sister Jeanette. She's doing a magnificent job. And you know, and I know that we don't exist without them, that
Amen.
they pour into us just as we pour back into them. And we want everybody listening to this radio show to know that you are who you are because somebody loved you.
Cornel West, folks. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, my brother. It's been a marvelous conversation, man.